Hey there, I'm Reverend Dan. We are Soul Evolution Collaborative, a nonprofit based in universal spiritual principles, offering possibilities for navigating the evolution of life in an authentic and intentional way. And this is Truth Be Told 2.0, a weekly series that is changing the norms, bringing you inspiring and uplifting messages for looking at life a little bit differently. So we are in the middle of a series on moving from either or thinking to both and thinking. Either or is this very cultural concept that everything should fit into a nice little column or a nice box that we can just kind of check off and say, yep, I've done these things, or this is X, Y, and Z. And it's very comfortable. We know what to expect when we can check all the boxes, when everything fits really nice into A or B or ABC or whatever it is. And life doesn't actually work like that. So, as much as we have imagined being able to stuff life into columns and rows for nice, neat organization and comfort, yeah, it doesn't actually work like that. And so, life might necessitate moving into embracing both and thinking, where something can be yes, this and something else, or more than either or, right? And the interesting thing about this is either or, we've been talking about this a lot, either or and both and overlap. To have both and thinking, it's not either or thinking or both and thinking. It's both and thinking encompassing either or thinking. You can't have both and without either or. So there are times when check boxes, but checklists might benefit the scenario, and being able to check off a list of boxes really works. And other times, most of the time, when life is not going to show up as just a checklist of boxes, and both and becomes really important. And then what happens is we get into this place of very frequently of discomfort because we're so used to either or thinking that to have something outside of the box of this or this, we're like, ugh, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to expect. I don't know how to control this. I feel uncomfortable being out of control. And so both and we can shy away from both and. So to embrace both and, we actually have to embrace discomfort. And that's all about today's message, is navigating that in between space, the space in between A and B, the and, navigating the discomfort of both and. And so today we're going to get comfortable with discomfort, or at least try. We're going to attempt, we're going to start, or take the next step wherever you're at with this, navigating the discomfort in between the both and. So sit back and relax and enjoy this episode of Truth Be Told 2.0. So discomfort, I think, is actually something we talk about quite a bit here in different contexts. And I don't know that we've talked about it before in terms of both and. I think we've
Mhm.
probably talked about discomfort about either or. I am just, life makes me uncomfortable, and so
Right.
either or helps give me comfort. Um, where do we start with embracing? Like, I think it's usually like, let's shy away from what is uncomfortable and not like lean in to what is uncomfortable. So I think the place to start is, where do we start? Where do we start with stepping into and embracing the discomfort, the uncomfortable that is necessary for both and thinking?
Well, I think, where I always start is like when I'm feeling uncomfortable, I ask the question, like, what's underneath that? Or why am I feeling uncomfortable?
Mm.
Just even getting curious, because sometimes it is super obvious. It could be based on an experience I've had in the past where I, embraced both and thinking, took a risk, moved beyond my little box, and then this happened.
Yeah.
And then it's like, see, we should have just stayed in the either or.
Told you.
Um, so I think it's about that. I think a lot of times it's just being curious about why we are
Mm.
uncomfortable. And then the reality of it is, any process of growth, any process of movement, you're going from where you are to where you want to be, and that in between, we talk about a lot, that in between, it pushes up against where we are. And so it's gonna be uncomfortable because we're stretching from where we are to where we want to be.
Yeah.
And like, oh, I've never been here before. This is uncomfortable. Like, going to a kind of like going to a party or something and not knowing anyone. Like, okay, I've never been in this situation before.
Talk
I've
about
I've
uncomfortable.
never been with these people. I know with these people before.
Yeah.
I'm uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
then being able to like navigate that and like introducing yourselves, talking to this person, talking to that person, and then beginning to like, oh, okay, this was uncomfortable at first, but now I'm okay. I mean, how many times have we had that? Or like when
Yeah.
you
Right.
start a talk or something, or a conversation, or even like a new relationship, like, oh, this is a little awkward, this is a little uncomfortable. Oh, okay, now we're kind of get into the. I think that's what this calls for too, is asking questions and then pushing, not allowing the discomfort to be paralyzing, and also allowing ourselves to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I mean, simple as that, allowing ourselves, not in an unsafe way, not in like, I'm not safe in this situation, but in this context, like new ways of being, new ways of thinking, new perspectives. I think being okay not knowing it all, honestly.
Yeah.
Being okay
Right.
to have to know everything. That may be one of the big ways to navigate, because I think that's what either or thinking does.
Yeah.
It creates this knowing.
Yeah.
And we're not
Yeah.
going to know it all.
That feels huge to me, hearing you say that, like being willing to be uncomfortable. Like, I think there's many of us have a tendency to, we're just not even willing to be uncomfortable. Like
Yeah.
discomfort is like the enemy. Comfort is the goal. Happiness is the goal. And so anything that's uncomfortable, any discomfort is like immediate no.
Something's
Immediate
wrong.
no. Yeah,
Something's
right.
wrong. Yeah.
And I mean, there may be times where that's something that we need to pay attention to, but I think we were talking about recently, like the evolution of our human brain, or how we as people utilize our brain, and that like missing piece between tens or hundreds of thousands of years ago, when there were saber-toothed tigers running around, and discomfort did mean like, oh, danger, like we might be in trouble. And so that was something we probably had to key into then, in that point in history. Like, we did need to key into discomfort, because it was our intuition, like, feel like I'm being watched by something that could come out and maul me to death.
Right.
Like that same feeling still happens, except we're probably, for the most part, most of us are not in a situation like that, where a feeling of being watched is like, maybe we're walking down a dark alley, and maybe it is something we want to pay attention to while we're walking down the dark alley. But for most of the time, for most people, when that hit comes up, it's not actually something physically dangerous. It's like we're in a situation that is new, and it feels like we've learned to feel as if it's that same level of danger. So I think like just being willing to be uncomfortable, like, seems like it goes against our wired
everything.
nature.
Well, and I think
everything. Yeah.
Well, and I think too, being like, sometimes we can view that discomfort, especially with new perspectives, new frameworks, new ways of thinking that may be different than we used to think. And like, oh, wow, okay. That it becomes this, almost, we feel sometimes, a threat to our identity, because our identity has been so wrapped up in these systems, frameworks, ways of belief, ways of thinking, ways of interacting. And that's who we are. And that's who we see ourselves as.
Yeah.
And that's both and thinking. And we can evolve from that, from how we used to interact, like how I was in high school or how you were in high school, probably not how we are now, right? But that is no less, we're no less us.
Yeah.
But it's this awareness that we are evolving.
Yeah.
And, as we know more, we do more, or we do better. We know better, do better, right? But
yeah.
I think if we can let go of it being a threat, like someone's perspective, or being open to this perspective or that perspective, or this life experience that I may not know a lot about, somehow taking it as a threat to our identity, and hard stop. Nope, not going to do that.
Yep.
And it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, what and I guess it is. I mean, I guess in that sense, like that intuitive kick of I'm in danger
Mm. Yeah.
because we become so attached to in in some ways, in a beneficial way, our individual identity has become such an important part of who we are
Yeah.
that that intuitive hit is, oh, there is something that is threatening to how I identify or to what I identify with or as. And there is also a huge opportunity for growth there. And so I guess being able to distinguish like
Mm.
something like that triggers like that hit that is, oh, this event or this situation or this person is threatening how I identify because maybe they're not a safe place to be,
Mhm.
or maybe this is like, oh, this is a situation that is asking me to question what I've known about myself or what I thought to be true. Like I based myself on things that I thought were certain truths that maybe either weren't truth, they were just observation or just an interpretation, or maybe there were truths at a certain point we've now evolved past and they're not true anymore
Yeah.
or not true about me anymore. Like there is that element of like the death of an idea. And I
Mm.
guess that can feel as equally scary as like actual death in certain ways. And so maybe, yeah, maybe that system still is valid, but it's a little bit of a different context.
Well, I'm reading a book now, and it's using a lot of examples from the Baha'i faith.
Mm,
And it had this amazing, I think it speaks exactly what you're talking about, that there's this belief that there are two things going on always. There's integration and disintegration.
oh,
And so
oh,
those things are both happening at the same time. And if you think
sure.
about it, this integration of new ideas, new
Mm,
thoughts, new ways of being, new frameworks, you're integrating that into your life, but you're also disintegrating those things that were there before. And so it's
mm,
this like this twofold sort of
yeah,
thing that's going on,
huh,
integration and disintegration, which like blew my mind even thinking about that. But it's just a different way of saying what you just said, because and I think
huh,
maybe that's why we feel that kind of ooh feeling, that kind of panicky feeling too, because not only are we integrating that super exciting and expansive, but we're disintegrating in those aspects of ourself that are not of ourselves, but those aspects that are no longer serving us or no longer useful in our current iteration are
mm,
disintegrating. And I think that can be painful and uncomfortable. That doesn't mean that it's not what needs to happen.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, just like
mm,
um, intention is a medical terminology. Intention is the act of healing. And so, a wound is intending, it's intention, it's this movement. It's you're
oh,
healing and you're in pain at the same time. And so you're moving in a direction, but
yeah,
yet you're also feeling the
yeah. Healing,
discomfort as your
healing
body
can
is
be
healing.
uncomfortable, and yeah, healing can be painful. Yeah,
So I think it's,
mm,
utilizing those examples of like, these are like natural examples, like the way things work, like these natural principles,
yeah,
whether it's integration, disintegration, if it's intention, like wound healing, all the things that we see, this natural cycle of things. And there's always that push up against, like, plants
yeah,
coming out of
yeah.
the dirt, that kind of push,
You know,
and that is just the natural part of growth and evolution.
that makes me think about the word tension. I'm not sure why, but tension I think tends to get a bad rap. Like tension is a bad. Oh, there's tension between them. There's tension in that relationship, or there's whatever. But it's like, but tension is like such a necessary thing. Tension is what holds things up. Tension is what keeps things together. Tension is what balances your arms and your like your
Yeah,
limbs, right? Like there's always a push and a pull and a give and a take and a tension.
yeah,
Uh,
and a connection.
and a connection, right?
Mhm.
Tension necessitates a connection. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing that comes up, this is kind of random. You ever heard that? I don't know if it's a story or a parable or whatever, but like there's a professor in the front of a lecture hall and they have this really big container and they pour like these like little rocks, like
Yeah.
2-3 inches probably. They fill it with like 2 to 3 inch rocks and ask ask the room, all right, let me know when it's full. And so they're putting these rocks in. It gets up to the top, and like, okay, it's full. All right. Well, then they pull out this bag of smaller rocks and go, So it's full, right? Oh yeah, it's full. Okay. Well, then they start pouring in the smaller rocks, and the smaller rocks start to fill in all the holes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let me know when it's full. And it's like, oh, well, pouring in, pouring in, pouring. Okay, now it's full. Now it's full. Okay, so it's full. Yeah, it's full. Well, then it pours out like a bag of sand. Pours the sand into the thing, and it starts filling in all the holes. It's like, well, let me know when it's full, right? That kind of reminds me of this disintegration thing you're talking about. Is like our lives are built on this like structure of the events that have happened.
Yeah.
And it feels like, because we perceive time linearly, that it's complete and this is the thing we stand on. And yet, as you were saying that thing about disintegration, it almost feels like the disintegrating of the story that we have that makes up the structure. Like the structure is still intact, but there's all this other space left to be explored and like filled
Yeah.
out. And so it's like the disintegrating of the story becomes the pieces, the smaller pieces that fill in the cracks to create a more firm and sound like foundation for who we really are. And that kind of just became a cool visual in my mind as you were saying that, like, oh, that it's just like that container with the rocks. And it's like the disintegrating is the sand at the end where is it really full? You know, like, is this really who I am? Is this really what I think? It disintegrates and fills in and it compacts, and then it makes room, right? The disintegrating of the medium-sized rocks in between the big rocks fills in the spaces, and now there's even more room to accept new thoughts, new ideas, new ways of being, new perspectives, new whatever. It's kind of a cool way to look at life, I guess, especially in terms of embracing discomfort. Like disintegrating may be uncomfortable because it is the death of the idea of what we thought to be true and or what was true and is now not, right?
It's like normalizing that it's okay to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I think that we forget that. I mean, our bodies are always seeking comfort. Our minds are seeking comfort. Our brains are, and I think in society, it's all this like, how can we be more comfortable? How can we? And so that is that push and goal. And I think to just stop for a moment and recognize the value of periods of discomfort, and even looking back in our lives, and like, where was the time where I was really uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Because it was something new and I wasn't necessarily good at it. But then I stuck with it, and now, it evolved into this thing. And so I think that's another way of navigating, just looking back, reflecting back on those times where you felt uncomfortable and you sat in it anyway. And then what came out on the other side. And so we build this kind of faith and confidence in ourselves and being able to sit in the discomfort when it is safe for us to do so. And then being able to see on the other side. And so the more we lean into those experiences, the more confidently we can begin to continue leaning into those experiences in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. And I think a lot of this too is like, while it applies both, I think, to physical discomfort and like emotional, psychological discomfort, I think there's an importance in distinguishing between the two, right? Like the world 100 years ago, I could understand why the goal might have been trying to achieve physical comfort, like the ability in life to lead a comfortable life. Where it wasn't necessary to have all of the kids work all the jobs to survive, because if we didn't, we couldn't harvest the fall crop and we would probably die, right? Like evolving to a place of like comfort in life was probably a really great thing, and I'm grateful for that. And I think we kind of took that and ran, is what it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with comfort, right?
Right. Yeah, right. And like I don't think there's anything wrong with any of the levels of comfort that we've gotten, but somewhere along the line it morphed into like this mental psychological comfort that any discomfort, any emotional or psychological discomfort is like no.
Yeah, we bailed.
Especially because I think most of us have had parents, like most anybody at this point in life has had parents that have been like, don't give me, I don't want to, nope, I'm not responsible for your discomfort. Please don't make me uncomfortable. You're responsible for my discomfort, so please stop. And so we learn discomfort is bad, right?
Right.
Then at the same time, I think there's also this like, in the physical realm, discomfort can be good, like working out, running, lifting weights, I don't know, whatever, like playing a sport, like pushing yourself beyond what you think you were capable of yesterday or last week within reason can be really beneficial. And then there's also a point where continuing to push yourself is detrimental.
Yeah.
And so I think that same thing is probably applicable to our psychological comfort as well. Like remaining in a state of psychological discomfort for prolonged periods is probably damaging. Like it's going to put us in a place where we're going to like rewire thought processes to now assume this is a new normal or a new whatever, and that's probably not great either. So it's not either or. How about that?
It's both
and.
Imagine that.
Imagine that. Yeah. Cool. Well, I know I'm thoroughly enjoying our conversation on both and last week and this week, and I think we have another 2 weeks of both and conversation. And it, as usual, is kind of pushing the edge of some of the conversation and embracing something new, embracing some new ideas. So I hope you are enjoying this. And as always, if you're looking for more conversation like this, definitely check out the rest of our YouTube channel. There are so many, like hundreds of videos about topics like this. So check out YouTube, subscribe, like, leave a comment. We would love to hear about your experience with both and thinking, your experience with either or thinking. How has that shifted? How has this video helped you? And if you want more conversation like this, you can check out The Gathering. More information on our website at soulevolutioncollaborative.org/events. Check it out Thursday nights. It's a small group, come together, dive into this conversation, how it shows up in our lives. So thanks for tuning in. If we don't see you Thursday, we will see you right here next week at Truth Be Told 2.0.